Right, everyone, welcome to the last session. It's a panel debate, argument, loving, whatever you want to call it. I think we've all had enough. It's late on Friday, and if anyone is left, you're going to have a great time here. So I'm going to leave it to Aidan to introduce. We've lost track of the titles of this chat for about the last 2 weeks. But Aidan, I'm sure you'll explain it. We have Gary Haldane from Kingdom. We have Marcin Szymanski from XM Reality again, and we have Helen Lomas from Platform. So everyone, on you go. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. Right, hi everybody. So the title the session is entitled "Can Good Things Come in Big Packages?" And I've had to sort of think about whether we need to sort of slightly pivot here in the light of Simon Ray's revelation earlier. But let's persevere. So I'll just introduce, just like to set the scene with a little story. 3 years ago, just before I left Orchard, I was doing some research into housing management systems, and as part of that, I looked at something called the Connected Housing Index, which was something that is produced by a consultancy firm called Visceral Business, led by Anne McPherson. And what Anne did every year was to rank housing associations according to how digitally connected they were. So that was things like use of social media, whether they had tenant portals, etc. And of course, Halton Housing Trust was always number one, and so on. But there's this list of organisations, and I noticed something about it. Right, I looked at the top 100 housing associations in that list, and I did some homework, and I realised that not one of them had bought a new housing management system for at least a decade. Right, so that was in early 2017. So that sort of made me think, maybe housing management systems are only purchased now by laggards and late majority in the market. Now things have changed since then. CX has come along and become established, and Northgate's done a lot of work on its product and so on. But I think that for me was quite an important sign of the times. And there'd already been a debate for some time about whether the concept of the housing management system was obsolete or obsolescent, and there was a lot of different approaches in play, like implementing ERPs like SAP, Oracle, etc., or Salesforce that we heard about earlier, or indeed building your own, using things like Microsoft Dynamics. So 3 years on, I think it's fair to say that there's been no obvious winner in this battle for the imagination of the sector. There's been quite a lot of investment by those housing providers that are engaged in ERP or Dynamics projects, and we know that some of the housing management systems have benefited from quite a bit of investment. And of course, we've heard today that there's a new entrant into the market. So we're also hearing, however, about completely different approaches to provision of IT solutions that completely break with the convention of one system to suit all needs. And maybe they're blazing a trail, right? So in this session, we're going to look at some of those different approaches and hopefully provide a bit of inspiration. I'm going to represent housing management system suppliers. It's been a while since I've tried to sell one of those things, but given that we don't have any housing HMS suppliers on the panel here, I'll present that side of the debate. So just to briefly introduce our three speakers, we have Gary Haldane from Kingdom Housing Association up in Fife, who I think you may have already heard from today, with the amazing chair, which looked like it sailed in probably from Sweden, which is where Marcin is from, and you may have heard Marcin talking this morning about XM Reality. And we're also joined by Helen Lomas from Platform Housing Association, who's been, you may recognise Helen from lots of the new initiatives and debates in the sector over the years about interesting new approaches. So I'm going to, let me remind you, please, if you've got any questions, stick them in the Q&A. I'll sort of keep an eye on those as they ping up, and in about 25 minutes, we'll start to answer those questions. So firstly, I'm going to start with a question, and I'm going to ask this one to Gary to start. What would the perfect software supplier look like?
So I think it's probably worthwhile just starting based on your point. Kingdom haven't actually procured a product. We've had Orchard for over 20 years. And we got an award for that. I'm not quite sure you should get an award for having a product for so long. Anyway, so I guess for us, in terms of kind of alignment with our strategy, I guess you'd be looking for a supplier who's open to connecting third-party systems and it can add value. We're always looking for systems which makes people's jobs easier so they can focus on the customer experience. In terms of things like reporting, we prefer no third-party tools if that's possible. Too many people end up dealing with spreadsheets every day. A full SaaS product would be good. APIs for integrations, Google authentication. We're an organization who use Chrome OS, so 100% of our clients, our devices are Chrome. So again, looking for a product with no downloads, only requires a browser, internet access, and then probably just a few kind of points to make. Definitely requires something with no server infrastructure, and it's really, really important. Last year, we had 66 virtual servers last year, and we've been implementing SaaS products, including Google G Suite. We now have 22 servers, virtual servers, and from that, I had a look at what we spend budget-wise, but also what we support. 17 of those 22, so 77%, are very specific to house management system and finance systems. So we need something that's cost effective. It's not just about annual maintenance of the provider, but it's also upgrades, security patching, IT time that's taken up, the upgrades, third-party releases that's no longer supported.
Yeah. So let me jump in there for a moment, Gary. Sure. So what about? So I think you described a lot of concerns there that many organizations would have in terms of the capabilities and style of delivery of the software itself. What about the supplier? So how would you say the supplier behavior and approach?
I guess in terms of the supplier, we're looking for someone who, I guess the ideal supplier is open. It doesn't have, it doesn't take, 100 days to implement a solution or, lots of consultancy. We're looking for, a lot of solutions out with our housing products that we've implemented. We've just got them off the shelf and then ran with them. I'm not suggesting that we could just do that with the housing system, but the important thing for me to probably really talk about is the cost as well. So the supplier's got to be cost effective because that has an impact on rent. Over a third of our costs, we can basically align to running those servers, to doing all the upgrades. That's over a third of our budget. And if we can drastically reduce that as well, but get better services, then it puts us in a good place.
Okay, so can I bring Helen into that question, into this at this point then? So I know that you're going down the Dynamics route at Platform Housing. So for you, what's the perfect supplier look like?
So our procurement process, we put quite a strong emphasis on the type of supplier that we wanted to engage with. And for us, it needed to be somebody that was passionate about the product itself, not just the glossy sales pitch, but actually really you could feel their passion for what they were offering to you. And also one that kind of truly offered us a sense of partnership. We didn't want somebody to come in and say to us, this is how you should work, do it our way, or it's the highway. It really much needed to be somebody who is kind of listening, who's taking on board our feedback and could play that back to us and show that they understood what we were looking for. And the other part for us was that they brought a sense of innovation to the table. So they were forward thinking. They had their eye on what was coming through the pipeline and were able to make suggestions as to how that could benefit us in our operations. And those are the key things that kind of drove us throughout our procurement process.
So that partnership approach, you talked about feedback and I assume you mean things like